Probably the reason that I went to the temple on La Cienega Boulevard, the little church, because some friends of mine said they have a vegetarian feast every Sunday. So I had been a vegetarian since 1967. So this was January 1969. They picked me up and we went down to the La Cienega temple. And I walked in, there was a little entrance hall. And there was this devotee, this guy, tough guy. He had a basket. And he said, "Put $1 in the basket." And, all right, I said, okay. And I put $1 in the basket. It was Tamal Krishna, right? Typical. That was our first meeting and the first devotee I ever had any contact with. Then there was a door, you went into the temple room. It wasn't very big, it was the church thing. And I remember there was a big kirtan going on, or not big because there were not that many devotees, but I stood by on the side and I saw they were passing around this lamp with this fire and everyone was going like this. I liked that idea, and when it came around to me, I just copied them and I went like that. And that was it. And then we went and had the Sunday feast, and there were 4 of us, and we went out, we left, and we're walking down and got in the car, and we're going up La Cienega Boulevard, and I was feeling, I don't know, I was just feeling some loss, sense of, we stopped at a light, red light. I said, listen, I said, this opportunity only comes along once. Turn around, take me back to that temple. So they turned around, dropped me off in front of the temple. I went up and there was a little porch and a door with some glass on the top. And I went to open the door, but it was locked. And I was looking through the glass at the devotees inside in the prasadam room. I thought, this must be a sign. It's not meant to be. Whatever it was meant to be is not meant to be. So I went back, got in the car, went up, the next red light on La Cienega. I said, this is ridiculous. Take me back. They took me back. I went up, knocked on the door opened, it was Tamal. He said, I knew you'd come back. And that was it. I stayed in the temple. That was it. I have no idea why, but that evening, Tamal read in his little office, because there were no books available. He had the only set of Bhagavatams that he kept in his office on a shelf, and he went to the part about how Krishna creates the universes, Karana Dakshai Vishnu, Kira Dakshai Vishnu, Garbho Dakshai Vishnu, and all these universes coming out of poreholes while he's sleeping. And for some reason, it made sense to me. I figured, well, that's as good an answer as anyone else has given in terms of what is this universe, how is it? So I just accepted it without question. And then stayed the night and stayed forever, practically. It was time for initiation, and Prabhupada arrived, and there was set up with, I think there were 6 of us. There was me, Palika, Sridham, a boy named Sridham, and a boy who was initiated named Durlaba, and 2 others. I can't remember who they were. We were sitting around, and Prabhupada, at that time, he chanted a full round on the beat. He was just sitting there, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, right? Then when he finished with that, he'd hand it to the devotee, and your name is Palika, your name is Bhavananda. So it took like half an hour or more while he was sitting there. Meanwhile, all these people started arriving, and most of them were intoxicated. I mean, it was like wild. They were coming in the windows. There were windows into the temple. They were crawling through, coming in the windows. Prabhupada just sat there and just chanted Hare Krishna, watched this whole thing, right? But it was crowded, milling about, hippies and all. It was a strange day. Then Prabhupada spoke, and then he left. We were all feeling, this is great. We have a big kirtan in the temple, and suddenly, one of the doors to the temple opens up, and this hippie girl runs in, totally naked. She wants to dance in front. She's going like this. I want to dance in front of the Jagannath, right? So someone came in with a blanket, wrapped it around her. Then I went into the shower room, and there was this Michael, I think his name was at that time. He had dark red hair, not dark, red hair, but not that bright red, but red. And he had an afro and curly hair, boing, And Vishnu Jana was shaving him up so that he was newly shaved. And he had this sika, it sprang out of the back of his head like a spring, right? Like a spring. And he was all fired up. We all crashed that night in the temple room, and he woke up in the morning. He said, he's looking around, his head is shaved. He's got this big. He said, he looked at me. He said, "What happened? What happened?" I said, "You're a devotee now, right?" And he went off to collect his stuff, and he came back, and later he was initiated. I think his name was Mohananda. Right? But it was what happened? I remember the first words that Prabhupada said. He said, "The Mughal Empire has fallen. The British Empire has fallen. Similarly, your American empire will also fall unless you take to this Krishna conscious movement." I remember it so vividly. Then he went to they had a little darshan room right off the temple room, and there was a seat there, and he sat down, and there was a low table in front of him, and I automatically sat down on his left side next to him, right? Prabhupada was here. I just automatically, and the whole room was full of devotees, and Prabhupada was smiling, and he was giving out prasad. So Tamal Krishna was sitting in front of him, and a devotee, young boy, maybe 17, 18 years old, his name was Jai Gopal or some name like that. He was later died in an automobile accident. But anyway, he gave Tamal and he gave Jai Gopal, we'll call him, gulab jamuns. Jai Gopal ate his gulab jamun. Tamal put his on some paper plate he had in front of him. while Prabhupada was speaking, it was very relaxed. It wasn't like a formal thing. While he was speaking, Jai Gopal took Tamal Krishna's gulab jamun and ate it. I don't know if you ever had any interaction with Tamal. He was very, strong, full on, but he could get angry like boom, right? Yeah. And he said, Prabhupada, Jai Gopal has stolen my gulab jamun. He was angry. Prabhupada looked and he laughed. He said, yes. He said, transcendental thievery. Right? And everyone laughed, and then Tamal was placated. So that was my first experience with Prabhupada. Then months later, by some frick of fate, I was asked to be Prabhupada's servant, his body servant. This is, again, in Los Angeles. They had rented a house on the flats of Beverly Hills. So I'd like to relate, many of you might have heard this story before, but it's a funny story, and it bears repeating. So I had no idea what being a servant of Prabhupada meant. But at that time, you had to massage Prabhupada, and then while you're massaging Prabhupada, you're cooking, because there was no cook. There was just the servant who also did the cooking. While you're massaging Prabhupada, you have food cooking on the stove, and I don't know how to cook. So anyway, I finished the massage, and Prabhupada goes to take his bath and Gayatri, and I'm fussing around in the kitchen, and you roll the chapati, and you, please puff up, the chapati. And then you hear the little bell. He had a little silver bell. He would ring it. That meant bring in my. So I brought in the tray with the bowls and put it in front of Prabhupada, and he picked up the dal, the bowl of dal, and he put it on the table, and he said, "What is that?" I said, "It's a dal, Prabhupada." He said, "Oh, no turmeric?" And I said, "Oh, I forgot, Prabhupada." And he looked at me like that, and he took his finger and he pushed the dal all the way to the other side of the table. Didn't touch it. Then I rolled another chapati, brought it in, and I went to place it on his plate. Prabhupada said, no. He said, dirt is like electricity. If you touch, it will go right up through the chapati. He said, drop it. So I dropped it, right? Now, that was my experience. That night, Prabhupada took his milk. It's famous that in the evening, Prabhupada took milk. You brought it to a boil 3 times, and Prabhupada would eat that, drink that. So in the kitchen, someone had brought a vanilla bean. And I thought, ooh, a vanilla bean. I like vanilla. Prabhupada will like it. So I took it and crumbled up the vanilla and cooked it with the milk. I brought in his glass of milk on the tray, and there were all these little black spots floating in it. Prabhupada said, what is that? Again, I said, oh, it's vanilla, Prabhupada. And he looked at me and said, don't do. Right? But he drank his milk. In other words, the guru asks for water, you bring him milk, right? He asks for milk, you bring him with extra. Just because you like it doesn't mean it's, right? So that was a little lesson to be learned. Then, of course, the servant, I drove Prabhupada for his morning walk. And at that time, he liked to take a walk from Sunset in Beverly Hills. I think it's in front of the Bel Air Hotel. up on Sunset, and then there was a long avenue. The avenues from Sunset to Melrose, not Melrose, Santa Monica Boulevard. It was long, 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 and all the trees lined up, the palm trees all in a row. Yeah. And we parked in front of, you could park on Sunset Boulevard in those days. And we crossed the road, and Prabhupada's walking down the sidewalk. And it's early, it's, just after dawn, and the sun is coming up, and all of these mansions on both sides, and in the driveways, all fancy cars, Mercedes, Cadillacs, Lincolns, and all with lawns in the front, and there was dew on the lawn, and it was all sparkly. And I was just, Prabhupada's walking here, and I'm just walking behind him, right, looking at all this, totally attracted. And Prabhupada stops and he turns and he spits on the lawn of one of these houses. Then he continues walking. And I said to him, Prabhupada, I said, my eyes look everywhere. Prabhupada stopped and he said, Acha? He said, that means you will go blind. And I said, blind to the material nature, I hope, Prabhupada. He said, no, blind. So now that I was 30 years old then, now I'm 86 and I'm going blind. So it's an example of Trikalagyan. The Guru can see back, present, and forward. He predicted it. Right now, macular degeneration, my eyesight is going. Then, Bhavananda said, so-and-so and his wife, they're having some problems, Prabhupada. He said, yes. He said, they're arguing all the time, all the time. And he said, they come to me and they want me to do something. He said, what? Prabhupada went like that. He said, do not get involved between husband and wife. Do not get involved in grihastha affairs, because their arguing is their love play. And he said, when they make up, you will become the enemy if you take one side against the other. Do not get involved. First, Jayananda, Karanda, and I picked out this area where that would be Prabhupada's quarters. And they built, Jayananda and Karanda built him a bathroom on that was easily accessible for him. He had taken us on a tour, all the devotees, on a tour of the new building, Watsika Avenue. So it was a church before, like a Protestant church. So we walk in the doors, and you enter this quite large room with big beam ceilings and a stage and rows of wooden seats, that for people to sit, like an auditorium. And there was a balcony with an organ. And someone said, will this be the temple room, Prabhupada? He said, no. He said, this will be the room where I teach the people of Southern California Bhagavad Gita. I will lecture from here. And he said, the people come in and they take their seats. And he said, like on your jumbo jet, he said, on the back of each seat, you put a table that and the table comes down, and then you pass nice plates of prasad to all the people. And when they're finished, you take all the plates. And I said, Prabhupada, where will all their shoes go? Prabhupada said, no need. No need to take off your shoes, their shoes. He said, if they want to go in the temple, he had picked this other room where, I guess after their services or whatever they did, it used to be like their coffee room, you know. He said, that will be the temple room. And he said, if someone wants to go there, he said, they can go take off their shoes and go in. He said, but the whole thrust will be my teaching Bhagavad Gita to the people, non-devotee people. So Prabhupada is situated now, he's living in the temple, and Jayananda, Karanda, and I are also living downstairs. But the rest of the devotees were still over on La Cienega Boulevard. And Prabhupada, as I said, had picked out this quite large room. This will be the temple room. And he'd come down every day. First he instructed us, build a wall here coming out. That will be the deity room with 3 arches. And so he made a room, a deity room, and then the rest was the kirtan, you know, for devotee assembly. And he said, I said, okay. He said, the Vyasa-san should go here, opposite, on the opposite wall from the main, the center dome, arch. And he said, the deities will be in there. And I said, Prabhupada, that's far, because they were little Radha Krishna deities. I said, Prabhupada, that's very far. How will you see? And he said, there is no question of distance. Right? Very profound. No question of distance of the pure devotee from his Lord, even though it may appear to us. He said, symmetry is the highest form of beauty. And then I said, what color should it be? Should we repaint it white? Or Prabhupada said, temples should be yellow or white. So I like the idea of yellow, so I went out and got, you know, those paint tabs, every kind of yellow I could find. And I brought them up to Prabhupada's room and and Prabhupada chose this bright yellow. I mean, it was, I would never have chosen it. But Prabhupada put his finger right on it, said that. It was like not a fluorescent yellow, but it was pretty close. It was bright. Then it had 2 big beams going across because it was kind of like a sloped roof. Prabhupada said, you hang cloth there, so it makes like a tent feeling. And he said, from the center you hang a chandelier, and in each corner you hang smaller chandeliers. So you know, you have the tent effect, and then chandelier hanging. So Gargamuni and I went out, and Gargamuni spent, you know, you have to remember, we're pretty poor, but Gargamuni's spiritual sky incense was flourishing, and we spent $10,000, an unheard of sum for us, on a beautiful crystal chandelier, and then I think $2,000 for the 4 corner ones, and I had hung a light, like lilac satin, and over it I had put white lace, so that when you looked up there was this lacy ceiling with a lilac back, and we hung the chandelier, and Prabhupada came in from his walk, and he had the kirtan, and he kept looking up, and at the end he said, all glories to the Los Angeles Executive Committee, right? fulfilling his desire to have a chandelier. All glorious. I never heard such a thing, right? And it was Prabhupada expressing his gratitude for us having fulfilled his request, his desire for chandeliers. And it was like we did it, we heard it, what he wanted, and within 2 days it was done. So he was very appreciative of everything. Not necessarily just a chandelier, but everything that devotees did. One day, I was sitting next to Vishnu John. Prabhupada was giving class, and Vishnu John was... And suddenly Prabhupada said, "Don't sleep." And Vishnu John lifted his head and he said, "Oh, I wasn't sleeping, Prabhupada. I was resting my eyes." And Prabhupada said, "Your eyes are closed and your head is hanging. You were asleep." Then Prabhupada continued the class, and Vishnu John started taking notes. He always had a little notepad. Whatever Prabhupada said, he'd write it down. And then Prabhupada said, "No notes." He said, "Do not take notes while I'm speaking. Learn to hear." He said, "Not notes, hearing is what is important." Right? Then another class, Prabhupada was talking about mercy, how the Lord's mercy rains down on the dry spot, on the cliff, on the ocean. It doesn't discriminate. And then Prabhupada said, even your Shakespeare says, in The Merchant of Venice, Portia says, "The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as a gentle rain from heaven." I was astounded. I thought to myself, Prabhupada knows even Shakespeare. It was amazing. He always was surprising us with his knowledge. He knew all kinds of, everything. One morning, he would pay his obeisances at Guru Gauranga, he'd pay his obeisances at Radha Krishna, then he'd pay his obeisances at Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra, then he'd take Charnamrita. One day, and no one else could take, I wouldn't allow anyone else to take Charnamrita until Prabhupada took. Prabhupada took Charnamrita, and he tasted it, and he had got this look on his face, and he was displeased. And he walked back and he sat down on the Vyasasana and he said, "Who has done this? Who has done this?" And Gargamuni said, "Prabhupada done what?" He said, "Salt in the Charnamrita." He said, "This is your management?" He said, "Oh, Prabhupada, it must. Who has done? Who has done?" And this girl raised her hand, and she said, "I did, Prabhupada." He said, "You do not know? You put salt in the Charnamrita? You do not know that if you mix salt and milk, it can cause stomach cancer?" And she said, "Well, I know now, Prabhupada." Smart aleck reply. And Prabhupada turned to Gargamuni and he said, "This is how you train them? This is how you train them?" A little incident. That girl left some weeks later. And the final little incident from a class, he was talking about association in one class. And he said, perhaps you've heard this before, but it always is worth repeating. He said, in our villages in India, the people pass stool in the field. He said, so this man was in the field and he finished his business. And he stood up and he looked down at the stool. He said, and the stool looked back at him and said, "Don't look at me with such a look of disgust on your face." He said, "Last night I was the most delectable gulab jamun, and due to one night's association with you, I have become this abominable thing." And Prabhupada laughed, everyone laughed. And I thought, yeah, Prabhupada even jokes. He's like real. You know, he interacts, he jokes, he teases. I'll tell you some stories where he teased me in Vrindavan. But you know, this was Prabhupada. He was a full person. You know, from hearing what little I can tell and someone else can tell and someone else, you can piece it together and get some idea, hopefully, of what the association of Prabhupada was like. One day I walked into his quarters and Prabhupada had headphones on and he was listening to the latest album from London, and Jamuna was singing Bhaja Mana Hooray. You know that Bhaja. And Prabhupada looked at me and he said, "She has changed the words." Because the song is Bhaja Hare Mana. He said, "She has changed the words and has ruined it." So that's one little snippet. Someone told me, a devotee told me, that in India, Prabhupada, I heard he likes to have green coconut, you know, coconut water. I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Where are we going to get a green coconut in New York?" And they said, "Up in Spanish Harlem, they sell them." So we jumped in a car, went up to Spanish Harlem, got 2 green coconuts, brought them back, hacked them practically, mangled them, trying to get through the green and the top. We finally managed it. I put the coconut on a tray with one of Prabhupada's glasses and brought it into him after he was up from his afternoon nap. And I brought it in, Prabhupada said, "Oh, dub." And I said, "You're welcome, Prabhupada." And Prabhupada said, "What?" I said, "You're welcome." Prabhupada said, No. He said, "Dub, that's what it is. Green coconut we call dub." So I felt so embarrassed. I was so foolish, right? Foolish guy. Prabhupada was not feeling well, so he had, Brahmananda had contacted him. Brahmananda was preaching in Kenya. And he wrote him from Nairobi that one life member gentleman has asked if Prabhupada wants to come and stay in his house in Mombasa, where it's very, very nice and warm and beautiful, right on the beach. So Prabhupada thought, yes, I'll go to Africa. And he sent Naranarayan and I in advance. And then Prabhupada came, and he was staying in a house in Nairobi that another life member had built in a very nice section of Nairobi, but he wanted Prabhupada to stay in there first. He hadn't moved in to bless it. So Prabhupada was there, I was staying there, Brahmananda was there, Shyamasundar. We were staying with Prabhupada in this very nice house. And Brahmananda brought all of the life members, Indian gentlemen, for darshan to meet Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was very great. This Mr. Shaha, this Mr. Shaha, this Mr. Panda, this Mr. Pandey, this Mr. Gupta. You know, they all came in. And after they all left, Prabhupada looked at Brahmananda and he said, "Where are the Africans?" He said, "You have introduced me to all these nice Indian gentlemen, but no Africans." He said, "I sent you to Africa to preach to the Africans. Right? At that time in Kenya, it was very tense between the African community and the Indian community because Idi Amin, just the next country, I think Uganda, he had kicked all of them out of Uganda. Many of them came to, so it was very tense. What will the Kenyan government do with the Indian community? So Prabhupada sent us out. There was a park. It was a Sunday. And there was a big park, and there was a big tree, and there's a photograph somewhere of Bhavananda and his assistant and Shamasundar and I under this tree with all the African, because that's where they went on a Sunday to like picnic. Big crowd. We had a big crowd. It was very successful kirtan. Then Brahmananda arranged a speaking engagement at the university, and there was a big auditorium with the seats going up and up, and it was packed with African students. Right? So we had a big kirtan, and Prabhupada was sitting on a raised seat, and after the kirtan, Prabhupada said the most incredible thing. He looked at all these African students and he said, God is black. A murmur, oh, God is. They had never heard such a thing, right? God is black. He said, but not black like you. He said, spiritual black. And then he went on to explain Krishna and you're not your body and all of the philosophy. But that opening line got the total, complete attention of every student in that big auditorium. How? Prabhupada knew always just what to say. And this Prabhupada knowing just what to say, I will come to different incidents where he always said the right thing to me for some personal thing I was. So that night, after he went to Mombasa and then went back to Nairobi, so I think it was Diwali, either it was Diwali Eve and we were leaving the next morning, or the next morning was Diwali, I'm not sure. And we were all sitting with Prabhupada in that house that we had been in. And Prabhupada, I think it was Shamasundar was talking about movies. Maybe we should make a movie of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada, people are interested in movies. Prabhupada said, yes, I will make a movie. He said, this movie will be 18 days long. Now, I just want to take a little aside. When I was previously, before I was a devotee, I was involved in filmmaking. And I had helped Andy Warhol make the movie Empire. The movie Empire, they put a camera on, I think it was on Lord and Taylor's roof, looking up at the Empire State Building. And the movie ran 24 hours. The sun comes up, it goes over the Empire State Building, the top, goes down, the lights come on. That was the movie, just that. It ran for 24 hours. And it showed in a little boutique cinema on 6th Avenue. Oh, it became a big social event. People would come and go all hours. So I'm thinking that was a big, like artistic breakthrough. And here is Prabhupada saying he's going to make a movie 18 days long. I was stunned. He said, 1 day for every day of the Battle of Kurukshetra. Then he laughed and he said, Brahmananda will be Bhima. And Shama Sundar, you will be Arjun. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, who am I going to be? And then Prabhupada went, and Garga Muni, he will play the crooked-minded Sakuni, the crooked-minded uncle Sakuni, right? And he went like that. And we all laughed. So I said, oh, Prabhupada, who will I be? He said, you will be my assistant, and I will direct every scene. So that was a nice snippet. From that, we can understand now certain things about Prabhupada's, let's say, personality and the personality of a pure devotee. We always were approaching Prabhupada as if he was limited somehow. But in these little instances, instead of a movie, let's say, being used as a preaching tool, like a 2-hour movie, Prabhupada took it and with inspiration from the supreme artist, Krishna, expanded it so that it would be using the medium of movies, but in such a way that would be spectacular to the conditioned souls. An 18-day movie. Can you imagine such a thing? And we are always limiting Prabhupada, thinking we're going to tell him something that he doesn't already understand and more, right? At one point, Prabhupada was staying with a life member, a woman, very nice woman, wealthy woman, in a big house. And we were in Prabhupada's room, a group of us, and Prabhupada wanted to know, where is Shama Sundar? Where is Shama Sundar? Shama Sundar had become ill. He was up on the roof of this big house. He had been there for 2 days. So someone was looking all over. Oh, Prabhupada, Shama Sundar is on the roof. He's very ill. He's been there for 2 days. Oh, Prabhupada got so disturbed at all of us. How is it that he is up, this devotee, Shama Sundar, is on the roof, he's ill, not able to move, and none of you have taken care, none of you have noticed? You've just allowed him to lie up there? Anyway, he properly chastised us, and we have to take care of each other and look after each other. Prabhupada he cared for every one of his disciples. We can't say Prabhupada cared for the whole world, he came to deliver the whole world, but then we should ignore each other, whether we're sick or... It was very personal. Prabhupada cared. So this development of who Prabhupada is, that's everyone's experience as you traveled with him or had contact with him or association with him as ISKCON grew and grew, right? He became more and more the Acharya, not only the world Acharya. So here's interesting. We had made, in Mayapur at that time, we had made a tin sign, had it painted with the model of the temple, and ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One day, Madhav Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother, Madhav Maharaj, and two other godbrothers, they come walking down up to the straw house. They walk into the straw house, They go and see Prabhupada. They tell us all to leave. We're in the room with Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, yes, you go. So we all went outside on the little veranda, Tamal and me and Jayapataka and Achyutananda, and we were listening through the little Chetai window. Prabhupada was sitting there, and they were towering over him. And they were fighting like anything in Bengali. But what they were saying was, how you can have your name Prabhupada? There is only one Prabhupada. How dare you? The Guru Maharaj would be... And Prabhupada was giving it back as good as... back and forth, back and forth. And then finally, Prabhupada says, Tamal. And Tamal goes in, he said, yes, Prabhupada. He said, bring me my stationery. So he brings him a piece of Prabhupada's stationery, and on the top it says, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. And Prabhupada shows it to them. He said, see, I am not calling myself Prabhupada. They are calling. What can I do? Right? And then they left. So Prabhupada was victorious. So that title, Prabhupada, stuck, right, with Prabhupada. And there's nothing they could do about it, because they couldn't interfere with the disciples' worship of their guru any more than they were trying to stop Prabhupada because of their worship of their guru, Param Guru Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So this is all Prabhupada and Godbrother, whole other realm. And we can't really enter into or make criticism of. It's there, right? I can say, he said, you can't say. One day in his room, but now we have no chronology. These are just little snippets. In his room in Mayapur, we're talking about something, probably, and then he said, I think it was prashad and something about, Then he looked at Achyutananda and I, and he said, what is the harm if a gentleman has a glass of wine after his meal to help him digest? Then he really gave us a look. He said, the problem is you cannot drink just one. Another time, he was talking about, again in Mayapur, the moon, how they didn't land on the moon. He said, Nitai pada kamalam koti chandra suhistala. The light of the moon, Lord Chaitanya's mercy is like the cooling rays, the cooling rays of the full moon. He said, so the cooling rays, he said, perhaps the moon is covered with ice, because it's cooling. He said, so the residents of the moon, they drink, there are rivers of somaras. He said, it's a heavenly intoxicant. And he said, and to keep warm, they drink the somaras and become intoxicated but warm. And then he looked right at me and he said, and no hangover. Right? In Calcutta, Tamal, Bali Mardan, Achyutananda, Jayapataka, and myself were in Prabhupada's room, and Shyamasundar was outside on the veranda doing typing. He was Prabhupada's secretary. What year, I don't know. Again, 74, maybe 70, 74. I was a sannyasi, so it would be around then. Tamal was the GBC of India, and he said, Prabhupada, I have a problem. Prabhupada said, what is that? He said, you know the letters, when you dictate your letters and Shyamasundar types them up, and generally they were either on the stationery or on those little blue airmail, that forms its own envelope. He said, and then he brings them into you and you read them and then you sign them. He said, but some devotees have come to me, they're a little confused because sometimes Shyamasundar writes something on that same letter and signs it to whoever the letter is being delivered to. Just innocent comments and questions, perhaps. But these devotees want to know, Prabhupada, whether what he's saying is authorized because it's on your letter. Prabhupada was quiet. He said, then he started talking about something else entirely. Prabhupada. And after some time, he said, Shyamasundar. Shyamasundar came in. Prabhupada was here, we were all here, Shyamasundar was there. He said, I've been thinking that you should return to England because I made you the GBC of England, but you're not there. He said, it's an important position and you're not there to take up your responsibilities. Shama said, oh, Prabhupada, what about I'm your secretary. Prabhupada said, he went like this, he said, anyone can be my secretary. He said, but this position is very important and I think you should return. It's time now for you to return to England. No, but Prabhupada, he's emotional. Prabhupada, I want to be your secretary, I want to travel with you. Prabhupada said, no, you should take up your responsibility. He said, after all, you are the main connection to George. He said, I think you should go. Now, Prabhupada, he wouldn't accept it. But Prabhupada, and Prabhupada, he said, let us take a vote. He said, who thinks Shyamasundar should return to the UK to take up his GBC responsibilities? And Prabhupada raised his hand, and whoop, all our hands went up. Prabhupada said, you see, the majority has decided. When the majority decides such a thing, just accept it and don't make a fuss. Yeah, it's a good one, huh? Just accept it and don't make a fuss. He said it strongly, don't make a fuss. And that was it. Je anilo premadana koruna prachu. Anilo prema dona karuna